Hello and welcome to The Wrap, our weekly roundup of what's been happening in North Carolina state politics. I'm Travis Fain, State House reporter for WRAL.
And I'm Matt Burns, the political editor for WRAL.com, filling in for Laura Leslie, who got trapped on a government shutdown assignment today.
Laura's on shutdown patrol, I believe, at the Raleigh-Durham Airport. So best wishes to her. We've got a few things that happened this week. As always, a busy week.
And next week, the lawmakers return. So
that's right. Next week they're back.
We might actually have some real news for a change.
And I think next week for the we need to start making some predictions. What we think is going to happen in this session. We start putting people on the record, man. Let's start with this Rucho v. Common Cause. That's the partisan gerrymandering case that's been bouncing around. Not one of the other gerrymandering cases. Not the racial gerrymandering case. This says that North Carolina, it's congressional districts, right?
Yes. Yes.
North Carolina's congressional districts lean too far Republican. That it's not fair. That it represents a constitutional problem. That's how bad they are. They're scheduled today. Oral arguments before the United States Supreme Court, March 26.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, this case, as you said, has been bouncing around for a while. There was a couple of partisan gerrymandering cases that went up to the High Court last year, and they kicked everything back down and asked the lower court that found a partisan too much partisanship in the drawing of the congressional districts, asked them to rehear it. They came back with the same results, said it's too partisan, so now we're back up to D.C.
Yeah, and so the question now is, will the High Court? I mean, they're going to deal with it one way or another at this point because they're going to hear arguments. But will this be kind of a fundamental change to the way we draw districts in the United States of America, or will it not? I think a lot of people say probably it won't.
Yeah, because I think Justice Kennedy was the one who really had some questions in previous cases along this line, and of course then he retired last summer and has been replaced with Brett Kavanaugh, who's more conservative, and the observers say it's probably not going to go the way that the Common Cause people want.
Yeah,
so.
Probably, and Common Cause had filed the case. It'd be interesting to see also how broad or narrow any eventual ruling is, and whether or not it kind of puts this question to rest for once and all, or if it just affects, if it's more narrow than that. Also this week, of course, we have 9th District news. We had the hearing on...
What else is new?
Yeah, exactly. We had the hearing on Tuesday, was it?
Tuesday.
Yeah, and then we also have had state board nominations, but let's start with the hearing. Let's go through the timeline.
Yeah, this was Mark Harris filing for a writ of mandamus, which basically a court order to tell the State Board of Elections, or at least the staff there, since there is no board right
Yes.
now, to certify the results of the 9th District race and effectively declare Mark Harris the winner. And the judge said, no, I'm not going to do that. There'll be a new board coming in next week. Their best position to handle this case. There's already the investigation that's underway, and and you could tell by his questions he was really leery about stepping in. He called it, an extraordinary action and highly unusual and whatnot. And so he kicked it back to the board, which I guess will, be seated next Thursday.
And this always seemed kind of like a Hail Mary from the Harris campaign to me, or one that is expected. I mean, with stuff like this, you kind of have to take every effort, and that just seemed like that's what this was. That maybe, I don't know what their expectations were. My expectations were not that the judge would do this, that it would be kicked back to. We're waiting until January 31st at least, is what.
And there was an interesting point. The Deputy Attorney General representing the state at one point, because one of the GOP arguments was, look, he's got a 900 vote lead, and there's no evidence whatsoever of any ballot fraud that would erase that lead. And the Attorney General arguing the case says, well, I'm not privy to all the evidence, but what I've seen and heard suggests that the fraud could call that margin into question. So,
yeah, that was kind of other than the judge's decision, that was the news out of that, was that at least the attorney representing the Board of Elections in this matter thinks there's evidence of enough votes. I mean, 900 votes is a ton of votes. And, we've also talked about it doesn't have to necessarily be that many votes.
Right.
You could have the taint. If
Right.
there's enough taint to the election, well, let's just throw it out and start all over. And the GOP itself, the state GOP, has said that if election results from early voting were shared with anyone early, that on its own would be enough to require a new election. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out. Nothing, I assume, will come out, at least not formally, until the board is seated and it holds a public hearing, which we would expect to be probably in February. The earlier the better, I think, for all of us. We got to name a board first, though. The governor's going to do that by the end of next week. And we got some nominations over the last couple of days. And, of course, we got some questions about those nominations from the two sides. So, let's see. We've got just one member on the Republican side who would be returning. That's 4 Eggers, potentially. Right. The other 3, the Democrats say there are questions about because when they created this new Board of Elections with the law in December, they said you can't have been part of a group that does electioneering within the previous 48 months.
Right.
Check my math. I think that's 4 years? 5 years?
4 years.
All right, don't make me do math. And so they're saying that some of these people did. Buck Newton, who ran for Attorney General, the actual issue was that he actually ran a PAC as well, and that's what Democrats are pointing to there.
Right. Francis DeLuca had some sort of Civitas-related.
He was with Civitas. He was the president, I believe, of Civitas at some point.
And then Eddie Woodhouse ran for Raleigh City Council.
That's right. So questions about that we haven't heard yet from the governor's office as to whether or not it thinks those are valid nominations. Democratic Party says no. And do you remember the name of the Democrats that have been nominated?
There were a couple that are already sitting on the board. Most notably, the one who isn't is Josh Malcolm, the chairman.
Josh Malcolm, the chairman, and the man who made the motion to not certify the 9th District and then to go forward and investigate it, and then was made chairman when Andy Penry, Cooper's chairman before, resigned over some tweets that he had sent.
Right.
Now Mr. Malcolm will not be involved in the new board, has said, at least told the Charlotte Observer, that was his choice. Has not called me back.
Yeah. But I think were there 4 nominees or 5?
There were 4, and it's 3.
And I know 3 of them are existing board members.
Yeah, Valerie Johnson. And now I'm just showing that I can't remember all of the names. Apologies to all of you. But so the governor will make those decisions.
And the 4th one was Greg Flynn of the Wake County.
That's right, Wake County Board of Elections member Greg Flynn. Eddie Woodhouse, by the way, former Wake County Board of Elections member, now lives in Corolla. Had asked him about the timing of that, said he did not move there until January. Apparently sold his townhouse earlier in 2018. And
moved in with mom and dad.
Moved in with his parents. Apparently there's a nice basement apartment down there. So anyway. Something else I read about the Cooper governor, the pro-Roy Cooper, I guess we could call it, moving NC4 Dark Money Group. It's a 501c. Having its 501c4, right, thank you. Having its winter meetings and just a who's who list of administration people. Like, they got deputy chiefs of staff going to this thing I didn't even know existed. I ain't even heard of.
Well, they had like Jim Trogdon and Mandy Cohen and, what was that, like 4 or 5 cabinet secretaries and second in commands in a bunch of these agencies. And and they were all just going to hang out with political donors.
Yeah, that's right. There was a reception.
At the Umstead Hotel.
A reception last night at the Umstead where more than a dozen high-ranking Cooper officials were just going to be mingling with folks at this reception. The invitation I saw didn't list, like a lot of times you see like recommended donation amounts. Didn't have that on this invitation. Past invitation recommended between $10,000 and $100,000 to go to a different event. That's a lot of money.
Knock off a few zeros and we might be able to go.
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of transportation officials there, so I wonder if there's some specific interest among them.
Yeah, the DMV guy was there.
Yeah,
so
the head
Tory
of the
Jessup.
DMV. And then today there were going to be a number of presentations on Medicaid expansion, which I think is probably fair to say is Governor Cooper's top priority going into this session. I mean, it's hard to say what's number 1 versus number 2, number 3. Education is always big.
Right.
But I mean, it's billions of dollars. It's a huge thing. It's going to be a big fight this session. Something to keep an eye on.
Yep.
So, that was happening today. Also, Was it today that we got committee assignments, I believe, in the House of Representatives?
Yeah. Speaker Moore sent that stuff out and kind of brought back something that hadn't been used in a while called the floaters, where some committee, some Republican House members can vote on pretty much any committee they want.
Yeah, it's four top leaders. It's
Yeah.
like the majority leader, the deputy majority leader, Speaker Pro Tem. I can't remember the other title, but it's four folks, and they can just kind of swoop into a committee. In Georgia,
If there's a tight committee vote expected, they'll just come in and goose the numbers a little bit.
in Georgia, they were called hawks, and when it was tried down there, a lot of rank and file people did not like it, and I think it eventually went away. When was the last time North Carolina did this? Do you remember?
Maybe a decade ago or something. I think they said it was used in the 90s somewhat, and then early 2000s, and it hadn't really, of course, Republicans haven't needed it in the past 6 years, but now that they lost their supermajorities and things are a little tighter on some of these committees, I guess like I said, they needed a little extra assurance that they could get their agenda through.
So this is a trick that Tim Moore learned from the Democrats, then, if it's that old. Everything old is new again.
I guess so.
All right. Well, so we've got that going. Watch for that this session. See if it plays out. See if there are actually bills that would only move, but for this would not have moved forward. That'll be interesting to see.
Speaking of Tim Moore.
Yeah. I wish we had a good story about this week, but this is Dan Kane at the News and Observer with a great scoop. Mitch Gillespie, who is a former state legislator, a former high-ranking official at DEQ, and most recently was on Speaker of the House Tim Moore's staff. He retired, left the legislature, mid last year, kept getting paychecks for several months. Apparently he had a bunch of leave accrued. I mean, there's kind of a lot of questions, though, because, this was it $90,000, something like that? It was a lot of money. So,
it was enough where he could go to that Moving NC Forward
recommended
donation.
I wonder if he did. Mitch, if you're listening, let us know if you took some of that money and gave it to the governor's dark money group. I kind of doubt it, but that would be fascinating. Anyway, read Dan Kane's story in the News and Observer. As much as I hate to send you to any other news outlet, they do exist, and they do good work. What else have we got here? The governor. We had a story this week.
Yes.
About the governor, the administration, telling rank and file employees at DEQ not to cooperate in an ongoing investigation that Republican legislators, have into the administration's handling of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline.
Right. So these outside investigators that was it Eagle Intel or something?
Eagle Intel, a couple of former FBI agents hired by the Republican majority to look at whether or not there were any shenanigans as a permit was approved for this project, this multi-billion-dollar 3-state project.
And the mitigation fund.
That's right.
$58 million that was announced at the same time the permit was announced.
Announced the exact same day.
And it was within like a half an hour of each other, really.
and this is a fund that was going to be used to do economic development along the line, help people, farmers and others, get natural gas out of it. There was some solar money in it, but it wasn't going to flow through the Treasury. It was going to flow through an escrow fund named by the governor. And that's different than mitigation funds in other states. That's what raised the red flags, raised a lot of questions. Some of it is moot now. The legislature voted pretty quickly to send the money elsewhere. Money hasn't actually been paid yet.
I was going to say there's nothing in the fund anyway.
Because the pipeline hasn't been built. But anyway, what was there pressure on DEQ from the governor's administration to approve the permit or to withhold the permit until this mitigation fund was set up? That's kind of it in a nutshell. There's some solar energy stuff as well, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. And the governor's office basically told people over at DEQ they think it's a witch hunt and don't talk to these private investigators. What's going to come of that, I wonder? I don't know. They're not going to give it up. They're not going to, the Republicans aren't just going to say, oh, okay. I mean, we could be talking about people being subpoenaed into
yeah, because I think they did give, well, I know that at least the committee has subpoena power. I'm not sure if they granted Eagle Intel that power. I can't remember. But,
no, I mean, it'll be, I think, the committee making the decision, but maybe they let the investigators ask the questions. I don't know. We'll see. That's speculation on my part. What I wonder is, let's say you're kind of a rank and file DEQ employee. You're involved in this permit. Is what you say going to be different in open committee versus what you would have been willing to tell a private investigator one-on-one?
Yeah, because there will be a number of cameras staring at you in open committee, too.
Yeah, we'll be live streaming that, I'm sure. So, and that's going to be interesting as it plays out. I mean, they're so diametrically opposed on this. The governor's office just is insistent that they're being treated poorly on this,
Right.
that there's nothing to see here, and the Republicans, we've written a few stories, and we're going to write a few more stories about it. So I hope you'll look for that. I think that's about all we've got this week.
No, the shutdown's over. Yay!
Yay.
At least for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks, yeah, until February 15th.
So congratulations, all you federal employees out there. At least you'll get paychecks for
That's
a couple,
right. And I
couple
hope,
weeks.
boy, I hope the back pay comes through in one
Yeah.
of those paychecks, because it's going to kind of be held pay if it
Yeah.
doesn't.
So.
All it took, I guess, was LaGuardia to
Yeah.
shut down.
Yeah. So anyway, so like I said, next week they come back on Wednesday, I believe, the 30th. Laura and Travis will be there nightly, at least Wednesday and Thursday next week, to update everybody, and we will be having podcasts too. So if you can't watch it, you can always subscribe to the TheWrap at NCCapitol podcast. And download that and just listen to your heart's content for a good 15 minutes every night, 10, 15 minutes to get caught up on what's happening. So
That sounds like a plan. I hope everybody out there has a nice weekend.